All right, I know our legal counsel's over there having side conversations and he's not quite ready to start this meeting, but the time is 3:01, council. So I'd like to convene the meeting of the Tulare County Water Commission. Thank you all for joining us today for today's meeting. Item 1 is a request to call the meeting to order. Item 2 is public comment. At this time, members of the public may comment to the Water Commission regarding any item within our jurisdiction that is not appearing on today's agenda. Public comment can and will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under the public comment period? Doesn't look like it. I will close public comment and carry on to item 3. The March 10th, 2025 recorded meeting minutes are located at the following web address. You can access the information there. Now on to item 4. We have Senate Bill 556, floodplain restoration, Logan Robertson Hecker, PhD, Executive Director, Sequoia Riverlands Trust. Sorry about that. I was trying to pronounce all the vowels in there, so I'll go with Hecker. Yeah, okay.
All right. See if I can get this to come up the way I want it to. Magic. Okay. Well, as Supervisor Vanderpool said, my name is Logan Robertson Hecker. I'm Executive Director of Sequoia Riverlands Trust, and I am happy to be here this afternoon to share a little bit with you about Senate Bill 556. This Senate bill, if passed, would secure crucial Proposition 4 funds to support floodplain restoration and habitat conservation projects in Tulare, Kings, and Kern counties. Multi-benefit floodplain restoration projects have been embraced by farmers, environmentalists, local communities, irrigation districts, and state and federal agencies from Reading to Bakersfield. And these projects are a rare example of consensus in the usually very contentious world of California water. So a little bit of background on this one and how we got to where we are at the moment. So the Safe Drinking Water Wildfire Prevention, Drought Preparedness and Clean Air Bond Act of 2024, which is commonly known as Proposition 4, authorized bond funds totaling $10 billion. Of those, $870 million were designated to the Wildlife Conservation Board for grant programs. The Prop 4 funds are intended to target the state's biodiversity, public access, and conservation goals. So as we all know, because we live here, this region has historically not received its fair share of state investment to meet critical needs, even compared to other portions of the Central Valley. And the projects funded by Senate Bill 556 would bring crucial benefits to some of the most disadvantaged communities in our region, and also keeping in line with the current administrations, the current governor administrations, and the state legislature's stated priorities. So thinking back a couple years to 2023, we all remember the flooding that struck our region during that historic winter. And I think for most of us, it was a really stark reminder of the need for improvements in our region's flood management capacity. Ongoing groundwater overdraft, subsidence likewise threaten our economic future, our communities, and our infrastructure. Both of these problems are worsened by the growing likelihood of more frequent, more intense storms, extended droughts, declining surface water supplies, and loss of snowpack in the mountains. So all of these challenges can be addressed by multi-benefit floodplain restoration. Not a panacea, but a tool in the toolbox of solutions. In that multi-benefit floodplain restoration gives rivers and floodwaters room to spread out, slow down, and sink into the region's overstressed aquifers rather than harming people, crops, and property. And to do so in a way that works with willing landowners and is also beautiful, as you will see from some of my photos here. So this Senate Bill 556 would procure some of these Proposition 4 funds for habitat conservation and floodplain restoration in our region, specifically in Tulare, Kings, and Kern counties. Multi-benefit floodplain restoration is highly cost-effective, and it produces numerous co-benefits beyond improved flood safety and groundwater recharge, including fish and wildlife habitat restoration, creation of good-paying jobs, carbon sequestration, clean water, and natural opportunities for recreation for our communities. Utilizing these funds for floodplain restoration is fairly common sense. It's proven and it's scalable across tens of thousands of acres of lands throughout our valley. And we're hopeful that if we're able to make these common sense investments, it'll leave our area less vulnerable to future damage, and will also provide lots of opportunities for us to recharge groundwater and support the local agricultural economy. So Sequoia Riverlands Trust is supporting this legislation, but for more information, if you have questions or want really more of an in-depth discussion, I would recommend reaching out to Senator Hurtado's legislative aide, and I have a handout that I'll leave as well that has his contact information. So that's what I have for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments? Are there any examples? First of all, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate you being here. Are there any examples of this being done elsewhere in the state and having success?
Yes. So the most recent example is the Dos Rios State Park, the new Dos Rios State Park, which is at the confluence of the San Joaquin and Tuolumne rivers. Okay. And so they essentially were able to purchase land to do this multi-benefit floodplain restoration. And so over the course of years, land that those landowners wanted to transition out of agriculture is being remade into this floodplain restoration, which will allow those rivers, as they did in 2023, to spread out into that region. Another example, actually more locally, is our Dry Creek Preserve. Okay. So that's a restored gravel quarry, which is, it's just below the dam, and it doesn't catch any flood waters that would come from the Cahuilla, but as far as Dry Creek, which comes south, it is able to help spread that water out across the land when it's running high.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Washington.
I'm not familiar with the bill, but I was just curious. Is there any thought of or comment or commitment towards being able to clear channels as well? Because flood control is multifaceted. It's just not one thing. Is there anything in the bill about that, about flood channel clearing?
I think this particular bill focuses on floodplain restoration, but there are other parts of Proposition 4 that would likely be able to focus on those other issues.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much. I'll leave the summary sheet over here.
That sounds great, thank you. Okay, next we are on to item 5, drought update. Denise.
So these are our well permits for the past several years, and you can see that we continue to decline in permit issues, or issued permits. I guess that is the correct order to put those words. So first quarter of 2025, we have a total of 110. When you take out the well destructions, it's a net of 84, which is, in previous years, we've had almost that number just in January. So you can see we're declining. This also, I think, plays into the work that Sigma's doing and how that's all playing out. This is the location map of those permits, so you can sort of see that there's still not a whole lot of patterns, but that Environmental Health provides this each month. I do want to talk a bit about the overall program. So we don't have updated numbers on tanks and hauled water from self-help for this month, but we typically have somewhere between 250 and 300 homes on tanks and hauled water. And then you can see the bottled water program as well, which we have about 247 homes on drought-related bottled water. Both of these programs are being proposed in the governor's budget to be eliminated and taken into the state board, where the state board then would carry out both programs. They are proposing to remove the requirements. So right now, self-help, if they get an inquiry within 72 hours, they provide assistance. State board has taken that off of their own shoulders so that whatever amount of time they think they need to address the problem, which should mean on the ground, we would have people out of water for a significant amount of time beyond that 72 hours. And state board, I believe, is trying to put more of the onus on the GSAs to meet this need versus self-help that's been doing this for a very long time. So we have a lot of concerns about that and how that will actually play out. The state keeps touting how they gave the program, I think, $12 million last year. That's really only a portion of the budget that the program needs to be effective, and I think it's about 6 months of program. It takes more than that. And so we are continuing to advocate that this gets put back in the budget and in a local contract versus moving the responsibility to the state board. And Jesse, I don't know if you have any other updates. I'm just kind of sharing what Tammy had shared with us last month.
No, those are good updates. It does continue to evolve on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis. But we are working with Senator Hurtado to try to get the $20 million that was removed from the budget restored.
So from your position then, I don't want you to speak on behalf of all of self-help, but from your perspective, this is not something you would even like to see because you believe that the program's been working effectively as it currently has been in place.
That's correct. We're very proud of the program. We think it's been extremely effective. We are very proud of our response times. We would very much like to keep the program, and I think ultimately we will, but there's some administrative pieces that may move to the state board, which, as Denise was saying, is going to complicate timing and approvals. And we also, don't necessarily disagree that it makes sense for groundwater sustainability agencies to pick up the cost. We just know that all of the GSAs are in very different places with that. Some have approved mitigation plans, some don't. Some have the funds designated for it, and some definitely don't yet. Okay. So we'd like the state board to give it a bit more time before they really put the GSAs in the position of having to carry the full burden. But at this time, we are moving forward with contracting with a couple of different subbasins to deliver the exact same service under their dollars.
Okay.
I think another issue to point out with the GSAs is that I think the GSAs would like to provide a longer-term solution. And so, for example, there's some dry wells near our road yard. It's like Hypericum or Dogtown, whatever you want to call it. The GSA would like to look at a more, instead of replacing every one of those individual wells, to do some sort of community water distribution system, and so that takes longer than just what this tanked and haul water program. And so recognizing that even with the GSAs providing the long-term solutions, there's still this intermediate phase that needs to be funded. And in a lot of ways, it feels like we're going back to like 2013, 2014 and re-educating the state board on why this program's important and what role it
So, and I'll just make a quick comment on that, and I could save it for later, but Greater Kauai, I just left the meeting actually early to come here, and we gave direction to staff to continue. So they had actually entered into formal negotiations with the landowner immediately adjacent to the Hypericum community. There are 37 wells there, and they were going to potentially lease, we were going to lease the 25 acres of farmland from them, get rid of push out the walnuts, and create a localized recharge basin, because we are aware there are wells that are currently dry, or one in specific, and then there's 3 or 4 that are potentially at the same depth that could have the same issue. And if we take that agriculture out and take that groundwater usage out of the area and replace it with some recharge, we could maybe preserve those wells or keep that community afloat for a while until we come up with that longer term solution. But the landowner on the 25 acres pulled out of the agreement, and then another landowner entered in, but this one's to the north, which would actually be more beneficial for groundwater recharge. But the point of that I'm making is we've got creative programs that are working like this, and I think the Hypericum story is a great example of how GSAs are working to innovatively come up with ways to keep wells from going dry, or to look for longer-term solutions in areas like Hypericum where a community water solution may make sense. So, yep, go ahead.
Are there any efficiencies that this county could perceive by crafting maybe a pilot effort to combine some of the other water availability support programs together? I know like Kauai Water Foundation and our CV Salts and Nitrate Construct is out doing bottled water support for quality reasons, and the GSAs have the obligation to provide water for quantity reasons, but is there any chance to combine all that?
They sort of are in the background. So if you look at this list, there's 1,532 that are contamination related, and some of those are part of the CV Salts program. Jesse might be able to speak more to how the program intertwines, because I believe in some basins, right, self-help is contracted to deliver some of the bottled water. Okay.
I thought CV Salts was like a really distinctively different and separate process.
It is a different process, but for efficiency purposes, so like, for example, we had the countywide bottled water program, and we worked to move some of those folks to CV Salts funding and then to self-help funding, but I thought self-help held both. But I could be wrong. We can get some clarification on that. But I know at least when Sarah Rutherford was working with the Kauai Water Foundation, that was the case. That may have changed with the change there. But yes, so I think that in the background there are, and I think that's the other thing that the state board has pushed is, you know, what of this that we're paying for that's nitrate contamination versus drought related. The other thing is our bottled water, like the capacity for our bottled water dealers is pretty limited too. So I know when we were with Sparklets, when the county had the program, we were bumping up against their capacity. We used Culligan. They ran out of capacity really fast, and so we had to switch over to Sparklets. So I don't know also like what our local ability to deliver bottled water is either.
I can speak really briefly for the Tule Subbasin. The framework that we've been trying to develop for domestic water is to create, and I forget the word that they use, but it's basically a framework to identify which programs are already funded. Like the Tule Basin Water Foundation, right, CV Salts, has funding for nitrates, right? And so trying to identify those programs and collaborating with those organizations to understand where the funding is and where it needs to go and where funding is missing. And in that case, that's where the GSAs would be coming in more strongly to where there would be some gaps related to those things.
And that's sort of the benefit of having self-help involved, is that they have a intake form that, at least on the drought side, they're able, like somebody comes in and then they can say, okay, here are all the programs that you're eligible for. And we fear that if that all goes to the state board, they're so disconnected that people are going to be without water for a really long time and not maybe even benefit from all of the programs they're eligible for. So self-help can get them bottled water delivery. They can get them a tank. They can get them hauled water, and then they can get them resources to replace their well or repair the well or whatever that might be. And we are the poster child across the state for this type of, under SB 552, drought relief. Like, all the other counties that self-help is not in want to know, like, how do you do this? And we're like, well, we have self-help. And they're like, how do we get self-help into our county? And beg. You have to beg, and then they can't leave here, though.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, thank you, Denise, for that. We'll move on to item 6. This is legislative subcommittee reports, discussion and action.
So we had a legislative subcommittee last week, and we reviewed our platform and we reviewed a list of bills. We don't have any official action. Our committee members wanted to sort of take a look at things a little bit more. Some revisions had been made, and so some of the bills weren't even water bills anymore. They'd changed. So we will be meeting again on May 7th and should have a list of bills for the next commission meeting. And then just some dates. June 6th is the last day for bills to get out of their house of origin. June 15th, the budget bill needs to be passed. And then September 5th is the last day for bills to be amended on the floor, and September 12th is the deadline for bills to pass. So it's kind of the look ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those kind wishes. I appreciate it. Okay, great. So we look forward to all the wonderful action that will be coming out of Sacramento in the weeks to come. Okay, next we're going to move on to item 7, staff reports, discussion, possible action. Item A, SIGMA implementation.
So the main update I have here is that the county with Assemblymember Macedo is sponsoring a bill. I believe it's 1044, but I could be wrong. I'm looking at Ross. Do you know the number of the bill? Okay. So it is crafted after the bill that formed the Kings River East GSA back in 2016. And it comes out of the Eastern Tulare GSA, members all leaving and leaving the county, the only member left in the JPA, which does not work. And so we've worked to create a bill that would create a new GSA. Basically, it is the remainder of the Eastern Tulare GSA, and so it gets really, really ugly. This is the map. You can see it looks like Swiss cheese. And it's really all of these light green areas that were the former Eastern Tulare GSA. It would take in Ducor Water District and Hope Water District. But it would be a legislatively formed special district that would serve as the GSA for this area, and it helps get us off of the JPA issue and onto actually implementing SIGMA and all of the things that need to be done there. So I was in Sacramento last Tuesday to testify alongside the Assemblywoman in the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. They had no questions. I think they were pretty worn out from their morning. And there was a whole rooster crowd there, which made it a really interesting day in Sacramento. But they passed it without comment or amendment. So it's moving on. But happy to answer any questions, or Rogelio to answer any questions about that effort. There's an interesting article in what's Lois Henry's? SJV Water, yes. There's an interesting article because Porterville ID and City of Porterville were supposed to go do something together, and I guess that's not happening now. So
well, and that's the question I was going to ask. Does it leave open the potential for additional entities to join into that special district?
So we haven't provided a boundary yet because different from the Kings River East was existing agencies, and so it was crafted to say all of these agencies and their boundaries, so as their boundaries change over time, the GSA would change over time. Yeah. This one is kind of the without side of that. It's like everybody that doesn't have a boundary. So we haven't provided boundaries to them yet. It's also confusing because they're calling it the Tulare Basin GSA, which then the Tulare Lake Basin got really confused about it. And it's like, no, but then I also recognize like Eastern Tulare GSA, again, probably isn't the right name for it. So we're taking name suggestions.
Can we call it the Eastern Tulare GSA 2.0?
Sure, we can, yeah. Or something even catchier. And so what we have worked with DWR is to provide them a shapefile to compare up against what they have currently for their exclusive GSAs, because if you'll recall, a few years ago, DWR had to go through a pretty big effort of cleaning up boundaries,
Yeah.
because when you draw a line on the map, it could be like a 2-mile line on paper and, in reality, and so how do you decide? So we agreed, we got some agreement from DWR that they would help craft the boundary so that we didn't cause problems for them or problems for us. But we have not provided that yet, and so, yes, the door is still open. There's another bill that was similar, and they included a provision for LAFCO to take action to add entities into the GSA, so we may look at that language as,
Okay.
as you'll recall, LAFCO was sort of left out of the GSA process, and they would really have liked to have been part of it. They get a lot of like,
Even though LAFCO's being drawn back into it with the
with all the
Allensworth situation.
annexations and the detachments and all of that. So yeah, how you address these outliers, and then we don't know if the state, a lot of them are doing this to try to benefit from the good actor provision, and we don't know if the state's going to grant any more good actors, and so then what happens? Do they want to come back in? Do they want to stay out? Like, I don't know. So maybe the LAFCO route is kind of the way to address that.
Yeah, at least give them an avenue through that.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be a suggested amendment or inclusion in the bill.
Yep.
I would think that the LAFCO inclusion would be interesting to explore, because before everything that started happening in Eastern Tulare, I did speak with representatives of Hope and Ducor as they were getting everything through LAFCO, and they were just curious, like, as these agencies are coming back, what is going to be their place now within the GSA?
Yeah.
And
So do you have a sense of entities that are rejoining or considering coming back?
I just think that, like, especially if you wanted to have if any of the other agencies, it at least provides an option
Okay.
for them, or a new agency wants to form, right?
Yeah.
You have the ability to include them in if, that's the way they want to go.
Because we just saw that in the Kauai subbasin with the consolidated effort. They created a new water district, or they're in the, I don't know.
In the process,
In the
yeah.
process, yeah. Yeah, so they, that wasn't thought about in the greater Kauai, and so bringing them in. But same thing here, if you have new special districts forming or special districts expanding, trying to be flexible, but not so flexible that everybody can leave. Again, I don't know. The Goldilocks approach, right? Just right. We want it just right.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, sounds like fun. Thank you, Denise. All right, now we're gonna continue on. Commission terms, item B.
So I believe Elva has sent out notices to everybody who is expiring. So Commissioner Blattler, Commissioner Washam, Commissioner Fino's not here, and Commissioner Snyder. Your term expires the end of this month. So if you haven't done so already, resubmitting your application to the clerk of the board so we can get it in the queue and get you reappointed. And then we still have a vacancy for District 5.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not planning to renew my appointment or request for a reappointment. However, my intent is to surface a wonderful replacement. So I know it's for District 1, correct? It's a district appointment.
Yes.
It could be a District 1, or we have the vacancy in 5 too, so.
She resides in District 1, so I think that
Okay.
makes perfect sense.
Okay.
She's also part of a very large vertically integrated farming company that farms all over the county, but has quite a bit of land holdings in one.
Okay.
It's a young farmer and rancher on my
good.
board, and she's very eager and excited to take on more leadership roles in community service, and I think she'd be a great fit. She has kind of an ag engineering and hydrology area of expertise. So I encourage her to come today. Doesn't look like she can make it, but I'm going to kind of mentor her into this opportunity.
Yeah, just send her the application.
I already have.
Okay.
So I was just hoping she might come sit through a meeting and be able to check one out before I made her sign
Maybe
on the
it's better
dotted
that she
line.
did it, maybe.
No, make sure she doesn't come to the legislative update meeting.
But anyway, of course, Farm Bureau is always available and at your disposal for any, any questions, presentations, support that's needed. I will be in the background. I just would like to get her involved in something, I think
Good.
she'd be a good fit. So I will make sure her application gets turned in shortly.
Thank you
and-
for making sure that you had a replacement. I think that's a very important
you.
thing to do.
Absolutely.
And I do notice that we have the wrong council name on here. We're just really willing Paula to come back.
Or we could just call Ross Paula.
He doesn't care.
Okay, Paula. Okay.
I
All
also
right.
recently spoke to somebody who was interested in coming in possibly for District 5.
Oh, good. Good, good. All right, so now on to Form 700.
That's the last reminder. It's also due this month, so if you haven't done so already, get it in. I know last year didn't they fine people last year? Yeah. Yeah.
So April's a really fun month. Tax day and Form 700 days, so just remember that.
Yep.
Okay, good deal. Sounds good. So everybody knows what's required of them. On to item 8, commissioners' comments. Does anyone have anything for the good, bad, or otherwise of the order?
I'll jump in first here. Last week, I went to UC Davis for the third annual Agave Symposium.
Oh, cool.
Pretty cool event to see growers, distillers, people in making surfboards and toolboxes out of agave. But just an up-and-coming crop. There's a lot of unknowns in how we're going to make this whole thing work. But cool to see that there's a whole group of folks working to come up with a crop that's going to hopefully offset some water usage to put into some other specialty crops. For those of you aware, agave only takes about 2 to 4 inches of water applied per year. So extremely low water usage when you compare that to almonds or pistachios or citrus. It's 3 to 4 feet a year.
So I have 2 questions for you. Number 1, did you have any tequila?
No, because it's California agave spirits.
Damn, okay.
So you can't call it that. That's from Jalisco, Mexico.
Okay, so, and then item 2, is there any agave currently being grown in Tulare County that you're aware of?
No, not in Tulare County yet, but we are working on that because I think it has its place here. But we're just trying to find a couple sites where that makes
Very cool.
good sense.
Good deal.
I've had inquiries maybe 10 or 15 years ago for off and on, trying to look at that, and nothing's been successful thus far, but it's interesting. And then I also have an application for a farm distillery.
Oh, really?
It's going to be in conjunction with a brewery out towards Exeter area. It's an existing place, but they want to put a quote-unquote farm distillery, so it's just a small-scale distillery out there.
Interesting. Cool. Okay, any other cool ideas in Tulare County? All right, thank you for those comments. Item 9, future agenda topics. Does anyone have anything? Maybe a presentation from the Tulare County Farm Bureau? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Working on getting the Tulare Basin
Yeah,
here, so
that's good.
continue to ask.
Okay, so we'll work on that, and then, of course, we can come up with some other ideas too. Go ahead,
I
Rahel.
might have one, and Logan, who also works with us for the multi-land repurposing program.
Okay.
Some of the facilitators wanted to provide a report, communicate with the county, and wanted to start with the Water Commission with some of the things that have been going on with MLRP, the outreach to both landowners and disadvantaged communities, and just also want to make sure that they kind of know where the county is going and where they're thinking of going with development and things in the community so that they can keep that in mind as they develop a core plan for the Tulare Subbasin.
Cool. Sounds good. That's a good idea. Go ahead.
I know Kawia has an MLRP outreach meeting coming on April 17th for, which I think is a virtual event. Yeah. Logan, because it's coming out of SRT's team.
It is virtual.
Them learn more about funding opportunities and writing a proposal and.
Okay. Good, so we got a few ideas. We'll work on putting some together. Okay, next, we're going to move on to item 10. That's our next meeting. It is set for May 12th, 2025. Hopefully, those of you whose terms are expiring, you'll get your applications in, and those who are expiring and hoping to suggest a replacement, please encourage that to get it in as well. And then we'll see you all on May 12th. We'll move on now to Commissioner Schneider's favorite item on every Water Commission agenda. That's adjournment. Thank you for coming today. Have a great day. Meeting adjourned.